Today we have one of our latest members to dive into the pool. We've got Alex Villaverde. Welcome.
Thank
He's
you.
from one of the more well-established family offices in the Netherlands. Recently moved down and starting to operate from Marbella.
I'm very old-fashioned for this, so I really would like if you could actually run your story a little bit, because obviously you're Spanish, you went abroad and you came back, so I would love to hear what the story is.
Yeah, so basically I was born in the Netherlands to a Spanish father, Dutch mother. And when I was 2 years old, I moved to Spain. I grew up here until I was 16, 17 years old. Then I went to boarding school in the UK for a couple of years, and it was unbelievable experience, and especially with the people I was sitting next to on the table. So I think that's it was a unique experience actually, because it was I did my GCSEs there, and it was like an integrated course, 2 years in one.
You still have contacts with the people that you met back in those days?
I do have contact, and with one of them less, but I'm gonna tell the anecdote because I mean it's quite peculiar if you're sitting with him at a table. But one of my fellow members is actually Emir of Qatar. So so Tamim Al Thani he was at Sherborne School. He actually created Sherborne School in Doha.
Oh,
And so it's quite.
So who was your classmate?
He was my classmate. He was literally for 1 year sitting in the same table where I was sitting. No, so it was an unbelievable experience, and I moved back to Spain to carry on my studies here at Aloha College, where I did my IB, and then I went to Madrid. But my dream was always to go to the US to study, so I went to an international university in Madrid, and I did 2 years there, and then I finished up the next 3 years in the US. I also did a master in marketing back there. And then I moved back to Spain. I said, what's next? So I started working at Yahoo, a search engine company.
Was it proper position, or was it like an internship?
I was marketing manager for actually Southern Europe. So that's what I did. But after a short period of time, I realized that's not what I wanted to do. So after struggling a little bit, I said, what am I going to do next? So my next step was to do an MBA, but I spoke zero Dutch. So I said, what am I going to do now? Because I wanted to go to school in the US, obviously, or Madrid. They were very good schools. I said, let's go to Holland. I learned Dutch and I do my MBA. So I went to a local school there, Nyenrode University. It's quite known in the Netherlands, and I did my MBA there. And when I finished, I was finishing my MBA, you needed to do what they call a thesis project. And I wanted to do something meaningful. I mean, you can go to Deloitte, KPMG, and they'll give you a room and you do some research, but I really wanted to do something that makes sense and that gave value to a company. So I went to my family and says, is there anything I can do? And actually there was. So I started working in a company that's in the retail, in the fashion industry.
Okay.
So we did a pan-European marketing strategy for the brands positioning themselves in Belgium, Germany, and Scandinavia. So then the research finished, and they actually asked me to stay work in the company. Said, "Do you want to implement your research?" And that was great. Then I really enjoyed that. I did that until 2012.
Okay.
And then the company was sold to another big retailer in the Netherlands. And then actually the shareholder says, I would like you to stay working here, but he already knew my family relationship, and he says, how important is your buying to your family, or would you like to do something else? So I basically told them, no, I mean, I'm loyal to my family. I mean, they gave me a chance to be here. And I didn't know what's going to be my next step. And then they asked me for the family office if I wanted to start working at a family office. So I started working as business analyst, and what I did is portfolio management of companies. So I had the chance to go through all the companies in the portfolio.
Were you mainly focused like in the real estate part, or
No,
the energy part? Or
I was mainly back then focused on the private equity part.
Okay.
So I was really focused on their portfolio of entrepreneurial businesses that came from construction equipment, machinery. They have also a manufacturing company. a building company. So actually the construction of high-end villas in Belgium. So that was what I was primarily focusing on. And then, well, as you grow in a company, people leave, and you've got certain qualities, and they ask you, do you want to take this responsibility over? So after a couple of years, I was a director in the company and increasing my responsibilities, and that's what I've been doing up to now. Obviously, we've also evolved in the family office because we've also changed our strategic investment policies. We've professionalized the family office. We've added more people.
Would you say that's a little bit your impact in the entire system, or was it like just the normal tendency of the company to evolve into that?
Obviously, I think I had an input in the whole situation, but I think you were forced to go in that direction. I mean, at a given point in time, family office, if in the sectors that we were in, we were a lot also working with the banking system. You work with banks and stakeholders. They also expect certain professionalism from your part. But actually, what I think was the big differentiating factor was back in 2019, because we sold a big real estate asset. I think it was within the biggest 5 real estate transaction in one single real estate asset in Europe. And back then,
That couldn't have been stressful at all, right?
No.
That must have been really easy. Nothing could have gone wrong.
Park.
Walk in the park.
For me, it was a great learning experience. I mean, to have been able to work along that part, obviously was part of a big team. It was on the real estate side, but obviously there were some on the family office side, a lot of involvement itself. So I was involved in the transaction. It was a learning process.
How long did that transaction take from start to finish?
Oh, maybe.
Well,
How long was it supposed to take?
And how long?
And how did it actually take?
well, I'm gonna surprise you, but
3 days.
it's no. I think it was done really rapidly, and I think it was quite unique because I think it was a period of 6 months actually that the process worked. We sold it on an South Korean institutional investor. They came to our offices through Via, but actually quite peculiar story because the person actually introduced the deal was somebody when I went to the boarding school. I was in England, so
It seems like that boarding school
A lot happened here.
made quite a lot of interesting entrepreneurs, eh?
yeah. So no, and he brought the sophisticated institutional investor to the table, and it went very fast. And I think it was quite peculiar because actually when we closed is when COVID broke up in Asia. So for us was we didn't know what was gonna happen. Then obviously we heard the news, COVID, but was like, okay,
Doesn't affect us. For
doesn't affect for now. I mean, you didn't really pay attention.
One of those news from far away.
Far away.
Like,
But then when you did the transaction and you involved and COVID hit Europe and you looked back and saying that such a transaction could have been a risk because of a pandemic. I mean, it's how lucky we were to close before, because I mean, this would be a reason nowadays for people.
so you did close it
We did
before.
we did close it before. Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah, it was. It gave me. I mean, it was a learning experience that I still remember on a daily basis. And going back to your question, I mean, back then you do such a transaction, you ask yourself, okay, and what am I going to do? Where am I going to invest in? Where am I going to invest in? So that actually forced us actually to professionalize our family office, and that's where we started expanding the team and also expanding our investment horizon in different asset classes where we were not used to investing before. Yeah, so one of them was in the, I call it indirect private equity, so investing through private equity funds. I used to do it. We like to do it ourselves. I mean, we go to company, we do a due diligence ourselves, it says, and then we decide to invest. We've got our own investment committee where we seek approvals of, but we do it on by our own means. And we decided at the end that doing it indirectly, it opens a lot of doors because it opens, we're able to invest in industries, geographies, doing ticket sizes that maybe were not accomplishing by doing it by yourself.
Must have been like a really struggle. I mean, because then you're touching basically on the core
Yeah.
essence and how the company operates.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, one of these changes must have been,
Yeah.
interesting impact.
Yeah.
Mm.
It was an interesting impact, and I think I'm very happy that the impact that it had, because this has allowed us to really position ourselves as a quite sophisticated investor when it comes to selection of funds and set up an investment portfolio with top tier global funds where we have exposure to right now. So I think that was I think it was a great step that we did, and we've achieved I think very good results, and it's an ongoing process. So we're still optimizing that process today. So from the 4th of November, I'm again in Monaco. We've got the super return. Well, you've got super return. They call it super investor, where they put together LPs and GPs, and that's how we look to optimize a portfolio consistently.
Did you say that the return or the profits that the company is making is the same now after that change, when what you call this, like indirect investment, or would you say that you've lost a little bit?
Well, I think we lost. I think the returns that we do things directly are higher than the ones doing to a funds, but that has to do with some risk profiling, and it's got a lot of elements that you need to take into account. But if you look proof and return, obviously what we do directly, we achieve higher returns than what we do through funds. But at a given point in time, you also need to look at diversification and risk. And obviously we believe that by doing in funds, it's not risk free, but that there's a much less risk element in there.
It's diversified, and it's
got people working on a portfolio for the last 20 years and doing average of between 2-3 times the money in the last 20 years. You say, okay, where can I go wrong here? Obviously you can always go wrong, but obviously the investment approach is slightly different to what we do. I wouldn't say we're VC investors, not at all. We have done VCs, but that's not part of our core activity. But it's just a different model, where also in terms of exits, when we do things ourselves, but we don't do it with an exit horizon. We look at a business, we look for the right partner, and we seek a long-term relationship. And that might be a dividend kind of transaction. It can be a long strategic, long holding transaction. And when you go from private equity, you've got a strict time horizon. You know that within X period of time, you're going to get X return. And I think that that combination of both have made us also on the direct side better investors.
Okay.
So I think the combination is useful.
But the investor committee that you have within your family office, it's a complete different scenario when you're actually being pitched by, I don't know, let's say directly from a company directly, with its pros and cons, with the people that they've got involved, etc. When it comes to funds, etc., I mean, the pitch is completely different. How do you experience that? How did you feel the differences? I mean, is it more exciting, more boring? Would you look for different qualities? How do you differentiate what one fund is offering versus the other when they're all fall into more or less the same semantics and figures?
When we looked at the private equity portfolio, we look at a series of elements. One element is obviously in the sector. So we like to combine, for example, credit funds. Credit funds are known for giving credit, but actually they do less higher returns, but they provide liquidity on a quite early stage. So that makes a lot of sense when you look at the portfolio. To create also some liquidity in the portfolio is always important. So we decide, okay, let's put a chunk of the portfolio in credit. Then we look at a combination of geographies. For example, we focus on managers that focus on the US, but also some managers in Europe. We've even been looking at Asia, but we still haven't found the right setup there to have exposure to there. But that's what we also look at. We also look at sectors. We go to big buyout PEs, which obviously they're in my vision very high ticket size, and we also look to the mid cap, small cap PE buyouts, and by looking to that, you learn the different dynamics of the different managers. We've also sponsored, I've been anchor investor for first year funds. So people starting for the first time, when we think there's a storyline here behind it, we believe in it, and we did, and one of the ones that we actually pioneered being their anchor investor is probably one of the best returning funds in the fund, and that helped them in the second fund to get more institutionalized in their LP base. And I think it's from both ways. So I think we've learned a lot because it has made us also a much more sophisticated investor than we were before. We look at private equity differently when you work together with funds than when you don't work with funds. But it's an ongoing process.
You mentioned different sectors.
Yeah.
From what I understand, ZBG spans across energy, finance, real estate. Based on the business model that you guys have been developing over these, is it 40-something years? How do you feel that those particular sectors complement each other?
Just to build a big background. So what ZBG actually does, ZBG is where we focus our direct investments in. So they've got 3 pillars. We've got our real estate asset, which is Prevas BV, which is a big real estate developer in the Netherlands with its own corporate governance model. Then we have got ZWEG, which stands for Zwieges Equipment. Zwieges Equipment does everything to do with construction equipment and agricultural machinery worldwide.
And that's where you started, right? That was more
That
the
was
industry part. Yeah.
that was actually what actually the father of the UBO, actually also my grandfather in this, but also his grandfather started in the agriculture machinery, which actually they sold to private equity or Thyssen-Bornemisza Nemica Group, TBG, which also family was private equity related. But yes, that's where the origins of the family office funds started. And then we've got our direct technology, where we invest in technology and mobility, and of which some very successful ventures in Spain also take place. We've been also in the VTC industry here when it was a big. You're talking about risks. I mean, we invested in VTCs when the VTC licenses were totally under discussion in Spain. Would you say
Still in the gray area?
it's still in the
Depending on the city,
yeah. So we concentrated in Madrid, where we had a considerable amount of licenses in Madrid. We did our own DD, and we used lawyers. And actually, our DD, we spoke directly to Uber and says, Uber, how do you look legally in the market? I mean, I can do a whole due diligence myself about what a VTC, but obviously there's a whole political scope I'll never understand. But if I talk to Uber that knows the business, they will know where it's at. And I think that
That's how Auro came to?
that's Auro that came. So we were, I think, big shareholder there with 30% shares in Auro. And yeah, so that was a great. And when talking about risk diversity, that's something a fund would never miss, because the risks are too high, at least not in the form of direct equity stakes. I mean, they would you probably get a credit debt fund that could do in the form of financing or something, but as equity that would be not a traditional private equity type of investments. So when you ask me about sectors, well, obviously when we do the funds, I think we try to reach out to sectors where we don't have direct access ourselves. I think we believe that the real estate industry, we've got our network, and
but you kind of closed a big deal back in the day, which was more or less
Put you
big.
guys
So
on the
yeah,
map a
yeah,
little
exactly.
bit.
But I think in the Netherlands we've got a strong reputation on what we're doing, so we will not go and invest in a real estate fund. Obviously, if it's a very specific niche, we have done, but it's a very specific niche, and but not directly in a kind of development or well, traditionally what we do in our pipeline, we will not necessarily use a fund. So where would we use a fund is where it's there's certain know-how that we would not have, or it's in terms of sizing or sectors or geographies where we wouldn't have a footprint. We say, okay, we can use this manager because it'll increase our access to a given sector or a given market. I mean, look at AI now. I mean, I can invest tomorrow. I get on my inbox, I can get a lot of pitches of startups that do AI. I mean, I would choose to do this indirectly. I would choose a fund that has expertise here, that has already experience with this, and I would rely on their know-how into investing this. And this we do in different sectors. Yeah.
How is the day-to-day to running a family office? What do you find that you need? How do you spend the day? What would make your life easier if you could find easily? Yeah, how does that work?
Well, at the end of the family office, I think you service a family, and you don't serve a business. And I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, your stakeholder is the family, and says, how can you serve the family in the best way possible? And I think you need certain qualities. I think a good CEO of a good business would not necessarily be a good CEO for a good family office. I think I learned on the way. I mean, I would never say
The hard way?
I think through I got the chance that from an MBA I got thrown into the business, and they told me solve this, and I think I had to learn a lot of things by falling and standing up. But I learned the essence, what a family office is all about, and you try to educate yourself along the way through the tools that you have. I use private banks, where private banks have private offices. They do events. They've got networks, and you start looking how does another family operate, and how could we use this. And at the end of the day, when it comes also for infrastructure, IT, I mean, how we're going to report all these different assets. Okay, you can report the performance of private equity, but I also need to, I need to monitor how public equities go. I need to also, have got art, wine, car collection, whatever it says. How am I going to report this? I mean, there are no standard tools. They're getting there every time with professionals. So you need to do a lot of research. What's the best way to manage and report this? And I think we've learned a lot throughout the way, but we've used a lot of the institutions along we've worked with also to learn from it, and establish an infrastructure that allows us to manage the family office how it should be managed. And I think we could consider us as a quite professional family office that have learned from all the resources that are out there to be able to facilitate the family with information, and also that they are able to make decisions with the right tools.
So currently, what do you entertain with? Because obviously, family office is Dutch. You are here.
Yeah.
Are you looking to do some local investments at all, or is it the main
absolutely.
operation is going to be focused in the Netherlands, or?
No, so just to add the direct assets you were asking, we manage those from the Netherlands. The family office is based in Luxembourg. The UBA is based in Monaco. And we try to adapt ourselves also to the new working environment. You can work remotely, and nowadays our chief investment officer works in Milan. So our direct assets are in the Netherlands. I mean,
The beauty of remote working.
yeah, but I mean, I travel quite a lot because I always is good to talk to people face to face. It makes a big difference. So I do that also every now and then. I must say, due to my origin, I've always looked for investments in Spain. I think there was always a big opportunity. I think we've got, I think, a good network in Spain. We've got good partners in Spain, so we try to deploy it. One of the anchor investor where we anchored invested in a fund was a Spanish agri fund, all CVC people. But we're always looking at Spain. We've always had assets in Spain, so we own a real estate here in Marbella since 2007. So it used to be the old Aris Bank, which was the
yeah.
Arab bank,
Yeah.
and now we being here, we rented out to the Dani Garcia Group, which obviously here locally is a well-renowned
Very well known.
hospitality group, and I think they're making something great out there. So this is something when you're here where you can manage more closely. We've also invested in technology companies here in Spain. Arrow, you already know, but we're also, I think, quite a serious investor in Playtomic. Also,
Kind of well-known company locally.
yeah, of course. If you like racket sport, it's yeah, I think it's unbelievable company that's got great ambitions, got great people working there, and I think it's gonna make a difference in terms of racket sport industry globally. And that we're constantly looking at new things. So we've got several things in the pipeline that we will do shortly, and doing that from here makes a lot of sense. Also active investor in the sports industry here, so we have acquired gym sport clubs in Spain. We're creating a chain to consolidate let's say the clubs in one platform. So there's some things in the pipeline down here which I cannot mention the names, but we're looking into them. So also looking at emblematic real estate transaction also here, and doing it from here makes that a lot of sense. I mean, I grew up here, and a given time in time you ask yourself how
I'm curious because as a returner to Marbella,
yeah,
It's that magnetic pull that everybody has from Marbella. You leave and then you end up just coming back somehow.
and the funny thing is that obviously we are here promoting this new angle to Marbella. We'll see these people arriving in Marbella with a different background than maybe they used to have. The people relocated to Marbella, where it was a different profile than the people that are relocating to Marbella now. So I was just wondering, have you seen this difference at all? Do you see, how do you feel now in Marbella? Is it the same Marbella that you left back in the day, even considering the age difference back then and now? But how do you experience it?
No, I think Marbella has developed itself as a global hub that was not before. It was always a very niche holiday, and I think it had a very niche factor. I think it went in also in phases, I think, in terms of how tourism has developed. But I think the people that you have now, and I mean, when I was here when I was young, and I mean, it was October. I mean, it was a small village. I mean, there was not really anything happening, and now Marbella's transition in the winter, it's becoming really a city. I mean, there's a lot happening. There are events taking place. You just
The general traffic that you have.
traffic that you have, but you see a lot of more professional investors around the globe. I mean, and now when I come here, you've got American, Mexican, Latin Americans. You've got people from Eastern Europe. You've got people from the Middle East. I mean, it's really a global hub that you feel that's going on here, and I think that.
I mean, here at the pool, we have what, almost 30 nationalities now?
39. Yeah.
39?
Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, that would have never happened before, and I think that's the beauty of it.
No, I think actually the pool couldn't have happened before. I mean, we are a consequence of this change of profile and this new interest and this professionalism that you're talking about. I think back in the days, I mean, a concept like the pool fitting into the previous profile that we're looking at, people who came here to play golf, or it just wouldn't fit. Like people like yourself maybe would not have been attracted to that.
So I must say, when I came here, I mean, I think it was great. I mean, I've always seen these co-working places as an investment. Obviously, we had real estate location where we believed in the co-working, co-living.
And you've been close to the co-working part of it as well. You told me about the WeWork thing, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think it was the first location in Europe, if I don't remember, but
it was your building, right?
Yes, it was our building in Amsterdam, and I think it was also a unique experience back then. WeWork, I mean, it was a revolutionary something, but I perceived it as an investment. I mean, it was co-working, but now for myself, I said, hey, what am I going to do now? I mean, I want a place where I can engage, I can do my work, but there's people
Do
working around,
podcasts.
do
Exactly.
podcasts. I would have never imagined myself doing a podcast. When someone bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what happens when you come to the pool. We pull you into all different scenarios. So yeah.
No, open to do so and telling my story. But I mean, when I came here, I was impressed, and I'm still impressed now. I mean, it's when you come here, there's a very positive vibe, and I think it's
Having grown up here in Marbella, I mean, we've never seen anything
No,
like this. There was never
no.
a place like the pool.
not at all. And I think it's a great addition to here. And I think people need places like this. I think it really makes a difference.
I think nowadays inspiration is quite valued, and I think what inspires people and the right environment. And I think that's something that we've managed to put together with people like you.
Yeah, and
It's like a domino effect, right? The right environment brings in the right people. The right people meet each other, and then they start doing great things together. So
And things start happening.
yeah, and I'm really looking forward to meeting more people here, and who knows what takes one step to the next step.
I do have to ask.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you're allowed to say about this,
Yeah.
but I've known about the Ares Bank for a while.
Yeah.
And it has been sitting there for some time. What was it that allowed you guys essentially to finalize the deal? Was it the right, did you want to back the idea of what was going to be built there, or did you want it to be something that was more meaningful to you guys, or was it just the right price, if I'm being honest?
No, it was not a term of pricing whatsoever. I mean, I think why it's been quiet on the Ares Bank is very simple. It was a protected building, so you could not do much. I mean, I can tell you, I've had a lot of people with very beautiful, nice ideas, but they were just not tangible because they would not get the.
I mean, I remember walking in there in the early 90s and mid-90s, sorry, and I was always fascinated by that because I originally came from Dubai, so my family had reasons to go to that bank.
Yeah, I mean,
And watching the structure of it, it would be a shame not to keep it.
And even when I was working at Regis, we were looking to expand. I mean, you would talk to all these brokers, and they're like, "Oh no, that building, forget it. It's really complicated. The license is complicated, etc., etc." Even for the pool, we were looking at different locations. That was one that fell on the table. But all these brokers directly would say, like, "No, forget that building. It's complicated and so forth." That's why when I heard, this happening, we were all impressed.
So why did you buy that? It's quite a sad story if you look at that from a story, but actually we invested it because a good relation of the family was in an online gaming back then. I'm talking about 2007. So we bought the building, and he was going to do like a kind of gaming business out of it. And in the middle of the process, the person who was going to do it unfortunately passed away. So it was very sad, but we were then, it says, what are we gonna do next? So we did not really have a plan. So we've always been we've never proactively really put it for rent, and we were just looking for the right partner. And I think having more exposure to Spain, network in Spain, at the end, that's how it came. I mean, via we got introduced to Danny Garcia Group, and also his business partner, actually worked alongside him. And we initially clicked very well, and we liked the concept, and I think it was great to have.
Made sense.
It made a lot of sense, and at the end of the day, there were a lot of things that came, but they just didn't materialize. And I think maybe because we were too distant to the business, it just didn't work out. And when you find the right partner, I think we immediately shook hands and we said we're going to make something out of it. And I'm really looking forward to what they're going to do there. And I think it's going to be a massive addition for Marbella.
Exactly.
But the business is unique. I mean, if you still go there and you see the old safes, the
Stunning.
it's the building as such is stunning, and location is stunning. I think it deserved to have
The right kind
the
of
right
business plan,
destination,
yeah.
and that was for us even quite important.
So on that note, what would you say has been your most rewarding project at ZBG, or even in your personal, professional life? What would you say has been the most rewarding project?
I'm always thankful for the journey I was able to make. And I think when I look back, when I started as a guy that came from a totally different background, getting this setup in this setting and giving me the chance to actually develop myself into what I am now. I think that's where I'm most grateful. I feel identified with, and I think every transaction I've done have made me the person that I am today. So I think I can look at a specific transaction. Obviously, I can name you a lot of transactions, but I would say
Collectively, they all
collectively the role that I've been able to have and that they've given me to be able to deploy. I mean, that's for me. That package for me is what if you think of me about CPG, that's what I think of, and I'm
every single one
yeah.
has participated in
and I'm still 44, so I hope
many.
I can share with you many more to go. But I think yes, hopefully in Spain we'll also have some meaningful transaction in the future. I mean, that's what we're going to work for.
So I would like to end it there with that message that you're
Yeah.
thankful for the entire journey and you're excited for the journey to come. I would like to thank you, Agus, for your time.
Well,
It's
thank
been
you.
great talking to you and learning a lot more how a family office actually operates. And looking forward to hear a lot from you.
Okay, you're welcome, and it
Thank
was a
you for your
pleasure.
time.
Thank you too.